Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Babbling It's been a while. It's been a while.
This is the special lockdown edition. Currently on at least level 4 now nationally. So yeah, we just like to get your feedback just first before we go into the guest as to how your experience has been thus far since the lockdown commenced for the global pandemic of COVID-19.
Yeah, so do you wanna start with our personal experiences?
Yeah,
Or?
go with the personal experiences.
This is the stuff that dude, the first 2 weeks was not hectic. But after that my mind just went into lockdown mode. Um I bought enough alcohol to last me like for 2 weeks. And dude, after that I had to ration.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, I spend a lot of time at home already.
Yeah.
No normal things. So for me, it wasn't that bad really.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people was a major adjustment, like being away from the workplace and now being in the family mode for the more than 4 weeks now. And I think personally for myself also, I also purchased enough alcohol for the initial lockdown period, but when they extended it, and especially with cigarettes as well. So like right now, everybody is running to the black market. Everybody is busy making home brews for alcohol and etc. And the legal cigarette trade is skyrocketing. So I'm not sure like what the reason was why they now banned cigarettes again after the president said it would be available for sale. I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that was. Quite frankly, the minister's explanation in terms of scape, at this current rate that cigarettes are going on, I'm not giving anybody a scape. It's like that inch is my inch. You gotta go get your own next. But yeah, other than that, it's been an adjustment working from home, using teleconferencing, Zoom, etc. to keep our work on up to date. Just catching up with a lot of admin. But I think from the creative process, like in terms of Charlie, what you've been doing, Charlie's currently off camera because we're maintaining strict social distancing in terms of the podcast. Everything is sanitized, wiped down. Um, so I know Charlie's been working on a lot of music. He's produced quite a few dope tracks, and myself also have been focusing on the artwork and stuff like that for the current collaboration, which will be coming out shortly as soon as I finish the artwork. It's Charlie X to C featuring DJ Fingers, the Kapers Woelag. Look out for that track. But yeah, that's enough prompting or promoting.
From the I don't know the news cycle, dude. I wrote down a few things since the last podcast. The lockdown has been extended. The DA started the concentration camp in Strandfontein.
Yeah.
Uncle Cyril had a mask malfunction. Animals returned to roam the streets.
Yeah.
Simonstown had orchids, the killer whales.
Wow.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna skip that one for later. People show the good sides. I don't know if you've noticed a lot of people's been helping out the poor.
Yeah.
The rappers have been showing the bad sides, showing disrespect and making fun of artists that needs help.
Yeah.
I read someone who said even the guys that says I do it for the love soek no end out. You know what I'm saying? It's disgusting behavior actually. Anyway, the 5G conspiracies went totally crazy.
Yeah.
You know how you guys feel about that? What's his name? Donald Trump said a whole lot of dumb shit.
Once again.
Trevor Noah and Bill Gates was vilified. I don't know. And the most important one, the Pentagon released footage, but it's old footage already. But I mean,
Yeah.
they released to say
Declassified.
to say that guys, there is some unidentified objects. We don't know what it is and what. And that is the reason why we decided to bring in these guys, Evan and John.
Yeah, welcome guys.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Thanks for having us.
Ja, waar beginnen ons? You guys, Afrikaans, how's your Afrikaans? Right?
Multilingual.
Multilingual.
I'm
Cool.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah, cool.
Evan's.
I'm not as good at it.
Yeah.
Is it? I'll try and stick to my English is sketchy, but yeah, I'll stick
Get you
to English.
bongo.
Yeah, so yeah, if you can, guys, maybe can just give us a brief history of how you've gotten to the subject matter we can discuss and just.
So, I mean, for me, I've always been interested in how the world works. When I was a kid, I used to take things apart to work out how they worked, and then I studied. Would read books about how things work, and then I studied a science degree, which helped me, vaguely understand how cells and molecules and things work, and I studied physics and things like that. It's to me, I kind of like to understand big patterns about how the world works. So discussing things like conspiracies and 5G and Bill Gates and stuff, that stuff interests me. But also, I mean, this concept to me fits into a picture of a larger universe. I mean, we're not just one little sphere hovering around in an empty universe. There's billions of other stars out there, and that's a hugely interesting concept. And I felt it needed to be explored. So I've been exploring it and reading things and watching films and going to a UFO expedition in 2009.
Yeah. Well, very similar to Evan. Also very interested in kind of the goings on of the world and how things work. I'm a programmer by trade, so I like taking things apart and understand how they work underneath. And also, just the structure of governance and the politics around it, all that kind of stuff. That I've always found that very interesting. So when I see a politician standing on stage and just flat out denying something that is so obvious, the red flag ticks up. And I've always kind of been interested in that, more so now in the last few years than before. But it's always been a topic of interest for me.
What I find strange is normally people would say people that believe in conspiracy theories is crazy, tinfoil hat wearing guys. But I mean, julle is geleerde. You it's not like you know what I'm saying. So it comes from a logical point of view.
Yeah.
There's a term, what they say, Occam razor, where the term says the most obvious answer is normally the right one. You were just referring to the size of the universe. Some say it's infinitely big.
Yeah.
The likelihood that there is other stars that can create life
And sustain life,
is flippin'
a very
obvious.
big
You know what I'm
number.
saying?
Yeah.
So, but I think we think, or the general public think, look, I haven't seen one, or alien or something like that, and it can't be true. You know what I'm saying? But and I think a lot of people come from a base of religion, really, where there's not that I'm anti-religion, but it's not really based on fact, man. You know what I'm saying? And it could be manipulated in so many ways, man. You know?
I think a lot of people don't want to think for themselves because that's dangerous and a bit scary to have to piece together your world. But if someone above me tells me, "Oh, don't look there," then they're safe again. They don't have to think about things. So I think people turn to religion and they turn to government to tell them about these things.
Yeah.
And if they don't tell them, it must not be true. I didn't read about it on News 24, so it can't be real.
Yeah.
And that's that's the level.
I think also if you're looking at the history of the world, especially focusing on religion, for a largest point of time, governance was done, the ruling of the state was done by the church. And what the church said was the gospel. I mean, if you're looking at the amount of times that the Bible was rewritten, if you go as far as like saying, going to like saying in terms of Da Vinci's Code, etc., when Dan Brown when he put out that book, there's certain chapters missing in the Bible. So who's to say it is the gospel truth? And secondly, the Bible is your first major work of science fiction, in my opinion. If you're looking at all the miracles, all the above humanly things that happen, or walking on water, etc., rising from the dead after 3 days, it's like that is science fiction. But yet, when you give somebody a fact, or you tell them this is the proposition in terms of there are other extraterrestrial beings, there's identified flying objects, etc., people say, nah, it's not true. But if it had to be on Fox News, would be the gospel truth.
But it has been on Fox News.
Exactly.
It's been on CNN. And people are...
Yeah. I think what is strange for me is that people rely on that account of history to guide them now, like the books. But there is I think there's a African tribe in Central Africa where they depict the solar system like our solar system with the sun in the center, and that was like thousands of years back, where they depict the sun and the 9 planets around it, in basically the same size as what it is. So how did they? Why not think about that history? How did they know about that? You know what I'm saying? That is, it just adds to the mystery, man. You know?
I think there's another tribe in Africa, I've forgotten the country, where they knew about another planet before Western civilization did.
Yeah.
And the reason they knew about it is because the people had visited from that planet, and they
Yeah.
brought culture and seeds
Yeah.
and technology and good ways of living. And they're very respectful of this culture. Came to visit them millennia ago, but they knew about it before astronomers could even pop that thing in the sky.
Yeah, so there's I was watching something the other day, and it was actually talking about I forget the name of those massive glyphs that are visible from space.
Yeah.
Nazca.
Nazca lines, yes, yeah. So those actually, when they started investigating them and started kind of putting them through the scientific process, a lot of them line up with one of them lines up with the what is it the winter solstice, the sunrise on the winter solstice, and the other one on the opposite end. So it's as if they had information that they shouldn't have had at the time, and scarily accurate.
Yeah.
And if you trace those through, I think some of them actually line up with other things like in Greece and other
The
countries.
pyramids also, like
the
I know
pyramids.
there's some of the
yeah.
tombs that show to a specific, like within the tomb itself, there's like a tunnel that runs right through the pyramid into a certain constellation.
Are you guys familiar with the I don't know what they call it, but the theory is that humankind is much older than what is thought of now. So what the theory says that there was advanced civilization on Earth,
Yeah,
but
that's a
but then a big
catastrophe.
catastrophe happened and basically wiped them out, and only a certain amount of the previous civilization lived, and basically gave the information to the new generation, basically. And that's why they depict people like from the as like almost like the knowledge giver type of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what they call it though. I don't know what's the
I've heard of this as well. I don't think it has a specific name.
is it?
Yeah, but I've definitely heard of this before. It's like the first people or something.
Yeah.
It's akin to the Atlantis theory, but obviously this predates Atlantis.
Yeah.
So this predates even dinosaurs, I think.
This with the evidence of that is the Sphinx. The part of the Sphinx, the bottom is corroded, and it looks like rain corroded it.
Water, yeah.
And the last time there was rain in Egypt was like almost like 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And they say that it's impossible. But the theory says that there's a base, and then the Sphinx was built on the base. And that now they're saying that the first civilization built the base alone, and then and it was destroyed over years and years, and then they basically built the Sphinx on top of that base.
I've heard other theories also that the initial pyramids were actually clad in gold.
Yeah.
So and obviously it's been looted over the years. Now I'd say that history, the name itself says exactly as his story. So whoever's reigning at the time determines what the actual facts are released to the public. So I think a lot of it, with the burning of the great libraries of Alexandria, a lot of knowledge has been lost with catastrophes. And I mean, I was always been fascinated. I think since the age of 13, I had a book. No, it's actually 12, by Arthur C. Clarke, and it documented all the extraterrestrial occurrences, different phenomena that happen across the world, dealt with things like such as telekinesis, etc. So for me, it was always trying to, and being an avid reader of science fiction, etc., Stephen King's books, and then later on there was actually a cartoon series as a kid. It's called Cities of Gold, and that was very informative. Actually, if we're looking at the ancient technology used by the Inca. So now you have the European diatribes stating that yes, this is we third world countries, but yet the knowledge that Africa and Southern America contained, and even places like Egypt, now they're vilifying Africans as being or their depiction of Egyptians as being, sorry to say it, like Caucasian, more on the Caucasian side, which is also saying that they they bombed the Sphinx to remove the nose because the nose was brought in flat. So the thinking that an African or a person of Africa had knowledge in terms of looking at the Arabs creating the zero, the numerical systems, the amount of knowledge that's assigned to non-Caucasian tribes versus, so they'll rather debunk everything that was done prior to them and saying their truth is the gospel truth, basically. I'm gonna keep coming back to that, but I'm just saying it, just using that as an adage. But I don't think if people had to just come together and say, look, yeah, this is your point of view, this is your set of scientific guidelines, etc., and these are ours, and how does this all come together? I mean, if they had to be open to that and to acknowledge other people's or other tribes and nations' contributions towards things, there would have been a lot more open, I think, a lot more movement. But as it is now, everybody's saying like, this is my truth, this is your truth, and your whatever you're saying is bullshit. So I think, yeah.
Tell me the history of the footage that was unclassified. Do you guys know the history of the data footage?
I don't know it very well. As far as I know, it was filmed. I mean, the first one was 2004. I think John, you looked into that a bit more.
Yeah. Well, it's the footage that was released was of the USS Nimitz incident that happened off of. They were doing naval exercises off of the coast of California, I think. So it was a huge endeavor, and these clips were taken in and amongst that whole exercise. And it was David Fravor, the guy in the video of the gimbal footage, I think, who was the main. He was the pilot, the commander of that squadron.
Yeah.
So for the guys who haven't seen it, it's essentially this FLIR imagery of this unidentified craft that looks very flying saucery, like your typical flying saucer type deal. And they're kind of if you listen to them, these guys are trained professionals.
Yeah,
they're military personnel, trained
They know what
observers.
aircraft
They
look
know what
like.
aircrafts look like. Yeah, so they've seen them all over the place, and a lot of these guys have been privy to a lot of black ops. So they've seen things that other people haven't seen. So for them to look at this footage and be like, "What the hell is that?"
What I thought was quite telling is so in the videos there's like transcripts of what the people are saying over their little walkie-talkies. And every now and then it says there's like a little square bracket where they didn't know what the word was, and one of them says, "Is that a USO?" Which is a very limited kind of military term. It means unidentified submerged object. Which means a UFO that goes under the sea. And they say that, but it's not printed in that little transcript, which I find very interesting because they obviously know the lingo.
That's the Tic Tac incident there.
This wasn't the Tic Tac. Yes, that whole thing was the Tic Tac incident, but it's also they released 3 different sets of footage. It was the gimbal, Go Fast, and FLIR 1, I think. That one is the Tic Tac footage. Yes, So the one with gimbal as well. That was from my perspective. It had no control surfaces, and the stuff that we make, the flying machines we make, they make a lot of noise, they make a lot of heat, and there was no thrust being generated by that. It seemed to be propelled by some other force, which is, and also if you know the way that airplanes work, without those control surfaces, when it turned on its side, it should have plummeted, but it didn't. So it's stuff like that just it makes you think, like, what is this? Like what is it? It clearly, and obviously that follows. Like, if we can't make this, then who did?
Who can?
Who can? Who did?
Are you open to it being maybe like a Russian thing or a craft, or maybe a Chinese? You know, the logical person would like obviously say, why are we jumping to aliens? Maybe it's just technology that's not available to the general public. You know what I'm saying?
So very much so. Yeah.
I'll go out on a limb and I'll say that I think various militaries have shot down these craft decades ago, and they reverse engineered the technology and they've rebuilt them however they want for their own purposes, and they've just kept that technology. I mean, why release to the public light speed or better technology when you can just keep charging for jet fuel or whatever
exactly
for decades?
Fossil fuels,
So I mean, I tend to think that there's a kind of a secret military which is not in the normal chain of command of government. I mean, they've admitted that it's called a USAP,
Unacknowledged special
access
program,
project. Yeah, there's a term for it, and they're not answerable to government. So they exist within the US country, the space, and they get funding from government, but there's no answering back to government. So Donald Trump does not know that these things exist. The Joint Chiefs of Staff do not know that these things exist, but they take trillions and trillions of dollars and they do magical research with it, and they develop these wonderful things. So that could be something that someone in the US has developed. It's not the government. It's maybe an offshoot of military contractors who just realized they've got something gold here. Let's not share this with the rest of the world. Why should they? They've got. I mean, I wouldn't if I had Star Trek technology, or I personally would, but other people wouldn't.
Well, apparently, yeah, like you say, apparently they started off as black budget military programs, and then when they developed the tech and they saw the power of it, they were just kind of like, well, we don't need to give this away. We're not going to give it away. We'll just keep it and not tell anyone about it, and that just kept snowballing. So now there's this, the quote unquote tinfoil hat shadow government. Yeah.
Because I mean, one of those technologies would make you more powerful than any military in the world. So if like SAIC or Rand Corporation found this technology, they'd be like, cool, I'm the most powerful person in the world now.
True. You guys familiar with Bob Lazar?
Yeah, very much so.
Is it? Yeah, because he talks about the re-engineering, eh?
Yeah,
but that's US, the US government that apparently, I think there was 5.
Lots of that kind of stuff. Is it? I'm just going to page through and find a picture. But there's lots of witnesses who.
Yeah, I think there was 5. He said there was 5 different vehicles that he saw, and one was apparently excavated.
Yeah,
like it's archive, whatever. What do you call it?
like an archaeological dig.
Archaeological dig.
Dig. Yeah, basically they dug it up, and his job was to re-engineer the technology and see if he can make it work. Basically.
There's a good book, The Day After Roswell, where Colonel Corso talks about the exact chain of events that happened. And basically, they have these departments already in the military, which are good at picking up unknown technology, disassembling it, and working how it works.
Yeah.
And they would be deployed when something from China dropped on the ground or something from Russia dropped on the ground. These people would go disassemble stuff, work out how it works, put all the IP into existing corporations, etc. So what Colonel Corso did is took some UFO stuff and said, hey, existing entities, go disassemble this. It's a normal thing from another country. Just go deal with it. And that's how they kind of worked out what these things were, and then they kind of fed them into normal corporations who then invented the transistor and fiber optics and integrated chips and things like that.
So you're looking like Roswell being that was the epicenter for Area 51, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I think also like when I read a couple of the certain authors I read, like specifically like Tom Clancy, also has like a very technical aspect, and I think he came out with designs for the vertical lift of rotor aircraft and rail guns, the stealth suits, etc. It's like way ahead of its time. It's like way before the stuff even made it into the movies. This guys was writing about it. So I think there's certain individuals that are privy to leak knowledge that are being kept by the unknown entities in certain governments. But I think it's quite interesting the fact that there is a lot of technology that could be beneficial for humankind, but at the same time, it doesn't serve the interests of say for instance, the petroleum bosses. I mean, I know for a fact that it was a steam engine that was.
Trying to find, Sorry, that's a image by an illustrator who attended a military demo show one day of one of these defense contractors, and then they had like an exploded view of how this thing works. It's called an ARV, Alien Reproduction Vehicle. It's a strange acronym, but that's basically a man-made version of one of these spaceships. And that's,
I'll take a pic and
schematic.
Google it and just put it on the screen when I edit. But my question to you guys is why now? Why would they release it now? What do you think is the theory or the mindset behind it? Because I mean, for years they've been denying it, but why now?
Yeah, I don't know. That's still up to speculation. We don't know exactly why. I mean, it's definitely gone up, and also a few things that other guys have pointed out, like Richard Dolan, guys who've been been doing this for much longer. We're just at the next peak of kind of that wave that keeps coming and going.
Yeah.
So it's not that there hasn't been as much disclosure. Also keep in mind that only in the last like 30 years have we invented things like the internet, and it's all over the place now. Information is disseminated a lot easier. Back then, all they could do is really write books and give press conferences that were like 5 people showed up. So people have been trying for a very long time to let this go. And also I think because of that, the US government is under a lot more pressure than what they were previously, because a lot more people know. It's easier for us to, if I find something or I film something in the sky, and I put it on YouTube and I shove it in their faces, and that happens like 1,000, 2,000 times. A lot of people, they're like, no, this doesn't exist. And then 2 other people standing there like, well, what is this? They can't deny that. So I think it's a combination of things. I think it's that, and also I think it's in we're at the next peak. You'll see that it'll hit mainstream. A huge amount of people will start talking about it, and then it'll go quiet for like another few years. And that keeps happening. But I think now that they've responded is because we're at that point now where technology is at a point where they can't refute it anymore. So I think that's my opinion anyways.
I mean, I think it's a secret that's been waiting to come out for decades, for more than 70 years since Roswell 48. And the fact that the secret exists just points how kind of completely inept and embarrassed the government should be that a secret like this has been kept by government, ignored by government, and I mean, actually in America, it's actually illegal, these operations who siphon taxpayer funding and don't report back to the taxpayer on what's being spent. All this research should be out for benefiting humanity, from the propulsion to the energy technology. That should all be available, but it's not. So it points to government being inept. It points to the media being inept, keeping the conspiracy going. It points to science being inept. We're not even looking at this stuff. Like, there's been no scientific papers that explore unidentified aerial phenomena.
Do you we're discussing the vehicles and the technology. Do you think that any government, or particularly the US government, has made contact with a physical life entity? Do you think it's possible, and why?
I don't know I don't think top level presidents have. I'm sure people within military cells have done so. I'm less interested in officials making contact. I'm more interested in average people making contact. And that's something that's very interesting to me, is the fact that you can actually do this. Average people can reach out to these civilizations by doing a simple meditation technique. I've got a whole training manual on that.
So okay, just coming back to all the material, we will have a link or a series of links that will be attached to this YouTube video, where you can check out some of the publications as well as some of the video footage available based on these phenomena.
Cool. To add to that as well, quickly, there have been obviously lots of reports of people actually making contact, but one of the most kind of profound interactions that have happened in our backyard in Zimbabwe, Ruwa, the aerial school. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. So quite a while ago, I forget the exact.
It was 89.
It was 89? I
think so.
Okay. So a missionary school in Zimbabwe in Ruwa, the aerial school, like I said, they all reported. So it was break. The kids were on break. They were playing outside, and what happened was the teachers were kind of they were chatting inside, doing their thing, and all of a sudden all the kids just started rushing in, and they all started shouting like there's this weird thing outside. Like what's and they started going outside and looking what's going on, and all the kids. So they saw this weird egg-shaped craft just sitting just outside the school grounds. And all the kids independently, so they took them and they kind of asked them what was going on. And each kid had his own experience with what was going on, but it was independent. So each kid was reporting that they saw these tiny little weird looking men that landed and came out, and they started talking to them, and they drew pictures, and all the pictures looked exactly similar. So it's and that as well as another point, that a lot of people who are anti-UFO and anti-UAP, they say everything just happens in America. It's like, no, it doesn't. There have been countless reports in other countries. They're just not as well known, because America, obviously, where America goes, the rest of the world follows. So and they've got a massive propaganda machine, so it gets out a lot easier. But it's I definitely think we've made contact in some form or another, whether it's officials. There were a few I don't know if it was another. It was also at Area 51 where I don't know if it was Philip J. Corso.
I think it was.
Was it Philip J.
Yeah.
Corso? Okay, where he talks about having to kind of take care of one of the only entity that survived the crash,
Okay.
and him being kind of like this developing this repertoire between him and this little entity, this other person, and he went about in great detail about how they didn't communicate via vocalizations.
Yeah.
It was a telepathic communication. It was more like a feeling kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if the entity needed, I don't know, to like quote unquote go to the bathroom or something, like it wouldn't be vocalized. It would be, and he talks about developing this repertoire with this entity. And it eventually dying, like I think 10 years or 5 years or something. Don't know the exact time. But there are a bunch of reports of this by credible people. When you talk to them and you see them talking, they're military personnel. They've got high level clearance. They don't have mental illness histories in their family.
Yeah.
So it's I'm inclined to believe that we definitely have made some form of contact. Like you said, it's almost mathematically impossible to think that we are the only life in the universe.
Yeah. Like just what you said in terms of like the ability for humans to reach out and via meditation, I think to a large extent we are only using about 10% of our brains and the actual abilities we possess, because if we're looking at the range of not superpowers that you could get in X-Men, etc., but there are people that are more in tune, abilities to astral project, etc., like to float or leave your body and to see the energy planes. So I think also, this is just my opinion, a lot of what you say just now has been depicted in various movies. If you're looking at Independence Day, when they captured the alien, kept it at Area 51, and the mental communication, I think that comes from fact, basically. It's has been established that this is how they operate, this is how they control the aircraft, etc. So I think we are being fed in drips and drabs the actual truth, but only according to their thing. And the fact that this footage has been released could be a precursor to the fact that in the next 5 to 10 years, you'll possibly see the actual introduction of the alien species that has now made contact. But because the human psyche is wired in a certain way, it could like cause like major panics. So it's like fed in drips and drabs by the propaganda machine. And until they have you ready to accept it, it will first be in a couple of movies. For me, as always, they always make a movie 10 years later and the shit actually goes down. So they prepare you basically, Contagion.
So that's why Arrival was interesting.
Yeah.
I thought Arrival was a very good film.
So like for us, like how do we then, what will be the next best thing? Is like, and how to get that information without having to go via the government.
I must say I'm a bit skeptic when it comes to a lot of things, man. The Bob Lazar thing for me, what is strange and why I tend to believe that guy is because he was talking about element 15 or 15, no, element 15.
Yeah, 115.
115, yeah. And he was talking about it for years. I mean, it wasn't even
He's
an
never
element
changed
yet.
his story. He's just
Is-
kept with it.
Yeah, and I think I think it was 20 years or 30 years after the initial story broke when we went on TV and talked about the element 115. Scientists could actually make this element. So, but in very small dosages, basically. So, how did he know about this element type of thing, man? That for me is what I believe in, or where I take note of it. You know what I'm saying? And obviously this footage, because I really didn't believe this footage. I just took it with a pinch of salt when it was released. I think it was released through WikiLeaks. Was it released first? Or?
Was it WikiLeaks or was it TTSA? I'm not sure.
Which footage are we talking about?
These videos.
The aerial
I don't think it was
the radar.
WikiLeaks.
No, it was the original one was To the Stars Academy, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I don't know if it was ever WikiLeaked. If it was, I don't know about it. As far as I know, it. Oh no, wait. Well, it was taken in 2004. It happened in 2004,
Oh, okay.
and then as far as I know, the first occurrence, the first mainstream release was by To the Stars Academy
Yeah.
in late 2017, mid 2018.
So that's been the big difference is whenever these things were covered before, they were always in little splinter fragment media, independent media kind of things. And they were always completely painted with like the ridicule brush. So mentioning all the keywords of conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat, little green men, X-Files, Trump supporter, they just pack in as many keywords as possible. You can literally read reviews of Dr. Greer's latest film and they pack in all the keywords to make you look the other way. So that's what's interesting about the TTSA leaks, is that when they appeared in mainstream media, they were in CNN, they were in BBC, The Guardian, Forbes magazine, Popular Mechanics, Space.com, and they were all given a huge, high credibility exposure, and that has not happened before. But what has worried me is that any TTSA leaks to date have always had that slightly fearful paintbrush added to them. So it's been the aerial threat identification program. Are these things threatening? Despite decades of them having not touched anyone at all and done nothing to anyone. But that's always been the brush. So that's what interested me about these leaks that happened this week. Or not the leaks, but the media this week. Is there was zero threat and there was zero ridicule painted onto these leaks. It was just completely credible fact. And that's not happened before. That's very new.
That's quite interesting because I mean, like you're saying, all those adages that keep being added to whenever something comes out is basically fear mongering. So you're making people scared of what these things, anal probes, etc.
Yeah.
Teleportation.
Fear or ridicule.
Fear or ridicule. Yeah.
So it was in Unacknowledged, the Stephen Greer film. They go into all of this where they say that a supposed, well, you can check his credentials, Richard Doty. He's a army.
Where's the movie? Is the movie available?
It is. I don't know if it's still on Netflix. It was on Netflix.
It's on iTunes and Amazon Prime and Vimeo, things like that.
Yeah.
And it was the #1 documentary in 2017.
For the longest time, yeah.
Yeah.
What's it called again?
Unacknowledged.
Unacknowledged.
And his latest one is also #1.
Really? Okay. The CE5 film, yeah. So he goes into great detail, this army intelligence officer or disinformation officer is his official title. He would say that they would abduct people with these ARVs, these alien reproduction vehicles. Anyone who is kicking up too much dust and coming a little bit too close to the truth, they would stage an event where they would go and abduct him, and they'd have people on retainer with physical defects that they would exaggerate to make them seem like extraterrestrials or something odd. And then they would just kind of scare the bejesus out of them, and then they would just go quiet. Like they would be like, okay, no, these guys, I'm gonna step away from this, and I'm never going back to that topic ever again.
They'd go quiet, or they'd go super terrified and tell everyone and get mainstream coverage about that.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, but then also they do it in such a way that when they do that, again, the machine is set up in such a way that when they do come forward, they're ridiculed, they're not taken seriously.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's quite interesting to see how we're getting hoodwinked all over the show.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the the dimension thing that you mentioned. How does, can you maybe break that down for me?
How do you mean?
The
terms of the
dimensions, and basically what is it about? Like, is the aliens in different dimensions, or is that the mindset?
The way that I understand it is that they've found a way to take their physical matter and just increase the energy of it. So it stops being as solid and physical as something around us, and shifts into more an energy state. So something that is more energetic and less solid will have less momentum, and you'll be able to go a lot faster. So what's interesting about these craft is that they're always kind of illuminated. They're always emitting a bit of light. They're able to go extremely fast and stop, or extremely fast and turn 90 degrees. I mean, you couldn't do that with a 747. If it had mass, you can't do a 90-degree turn at 200,000 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
But these things can. So the way that I see it is that they're able to turn their solid mass into something a bit more energetic. And what's interesting is that is also what people can do during meditation. You can take your mind up an energy level and interface with things that are at a slightly more energetic level and less a solid level. So there's a bunch of people who talk about the crossover between what people can do organically and then what technology can do with good technology. So these things are just really good technology. They turn a dial and they shift into the energetic state. But you can interact with that with your mind as well. And there's a lot of scientific evidence behind that. There's decades and decades of study proving that these things are possible. People don't know about it, but several very high level institutions have studied this stuff.
The book that you were referring to, can you just maybe just show the
This one,
what the
Disclosure.
dimensions?
uh,
The meditation one? I just wanna
so I mean this is a training manual
okay.
from CSETI, the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and they're all about training normal people like you and I how to go into a meditation and how to reach out to these visitors who are kind of in our star system and say to them, hello, we're here, we're nice, reasonable folks, we're peaceful, we're intelligent, we'd like to reach out, we'd like to have a cultural exchange, we'd like to get to know you, we'd like to have an ambassadorial effort. I mean, the part of their thinking was based on, during the Cold War, there were teams of Americans who'd go to Russia to say, hello, we exist as normal folks. You don't have to think of us as the other or weird or stay away from us. We're actually normal human beings. And these groups would make efforts to communicate with each other as an citizens ambassadorial effort. So that's what CSETI is modeled on, is average human beings.
Where is
going out
that
there
though?
and making
Is
contact.
it South African based or?
No, so I mean, this is American, but there's tens of thousands of groups around the world who are making contact.
Have you
and they're doing
personally
it from their
can you
backyard.
can you talk about experience or
Yeah. So in 2009, I went on their training week in Colorado. And we learned the protocols. And I mean, what was interesting was the people who went on that trip were not tinfoil hat ridiculous people. There were scientists, there were engineers, there was a pilot, there were two pastors, there were people who have university degrees. There was like one or two ex-military people. Like, these were very high credibility, intelligent people. It was a very interesting week. But basically, we learned the protocols. We practiced them in the evening. We saw some things which were unexplainable to me as a scientist. Some lights in the sky which I've never seen before at all. Some of the people who were more intuitive saw more things, but I can't vouch for that because that was their perception. But basically, the technology works. I took it home and set up a group in Cape Town between 2010 and 2012, and we would practice these meditations, and we would also see things in the sky that were unexplained, and those things were very, very real. I shone my laser pointer at it, and it flashed back at me intelligently. So that was quite interesting. Yeah, and average people can do this.
So it's basically finding out ways to remove the wool that's in front of your eyes. Because I think also we've been trained in a sense that we can't see certain things, or we just automatically block it out. Is this just a manner of being able to boost, like you say, to boost the energy level in your brain and in your consciousness, and you're being able to project and then to see or become a receiver of what is out there?
Well, I think people are tricked by the current scientific paradigm, which says that your consciousness sits in your brain only, whereas new experiments are showing that your brain is more of a receiver. It's more of a radio for a universal radio.
Like the
wave.
sixth sense that you'll have, like the sense of intuition, or like, your gut feeling.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just your common senses. It's like you just know something is out there or something is wrong, etc.
Yeah. I mean, quantum theory says that time and space are illusions. They're not real things. That people experience them in daily life, but in experiments, time and space don't exist. So what you do during these protocols is you expand your consciousness and you say, I'm more of a beacon instead of this little limited person. So for these 30 minutes while I'm meditating, I'm a beacon. And you say, hello, anyone who's in the vicinity. We're peaceful folks. Come visit us. This is our location, and you visualize your location like a Google Maps. Zoom in. You say, cool, I'm third rock from the sun, this continent, next to this river in this field. And when people do it, they get ridiculous footage. There's footage of these craft just popping and appearing and merging and spinning, and like it happens. It's ridiculous.
Maybe you should share the website as well, so the guys can maybe put it up, because it's not like people are doing this and nothing's happening.
No.
They're doing this, and it's like you can see they've recorded it. There are weird lights and all kinds of things just happen, and everything we've been talking about, like orbs and odd things happening.
Yeah, well, I think what we can do, you can just give me a list of the websites and books, the names of it.
Sure.
And then I'll obviously I really want to check it out myself. Is there any tangible proof like you said on the website, do they have like footage where you can see? You know what I'm saying? For
these
for a
phenomena.
skeptic, if somebody is a major skeptic, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Is
So I don't think any footage will convince a major skeptic.
Mm.
That's what's interesting about this topic is it has such a huge burden of proof on it. People are willing to believe a News 24 article which says, oh, some guy regrew a human arm from a stem cell. Like that's to other people, that's normal. But to say to them, oh, someone visited from another planet, and they flew around and
Yeah.
then went away, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So even if you took a body and you put it in front of someone,
Yeah,
like,
so it's
"Oh,
that.
it's rubber, it's not real.
Yeah.
And if you took
Special
like,
effects.
yeah, exactly. It's it was done in 3D Studio Max. or something.
CGI. whatever.
Um,
No,
so there's
it's like-
a huge burden of proof on it. But in terms of proof, I mean, there's people who say that they have evidence. They've got radar data. They've got plaster casts of where these things landed on the ground, and they took plaster. They've got radiation readings. They've got heat readings, magnetic readings. I mean, there's people who will put their hand on the Bible and swear in court. That's what this book is about. There's 800 witnesses who are very highly credible. That's, I mean, for any court case, that is enough proof. You don't need documentary proof. You just need people willing to put their hand on the Bible and swear that it's true, at least in the American legal system. But I think if you want proof, make contact yourself and say hello.
It's like just coming back to that cartoon series I watched as a kid. I mean, even then they showed those giant markers which are linked to the solstices, the winter and summer solstices, and also like the major patterns that you find in South America from the aerial view, and it's like that would have been impossible to do without guidance from other source. And I think it also talks to, especially with the Southern American, the Anunnaki, the vehicles, etc., the gravity machines. I mean, all the sculptures that are associated with that. There's like that is proof, and that dates back to thousands of years. So I think, like in terms of society, we have lost a lot of linkages, where the extraterrestrials might have visited the higher powers or etc. And I think that's also where for a large degree, the God complex comes in. Why that's so closely linked. Why there's always the need for us to find out who are creators, who are makers, who's the power in the sky. Because I think that's where it comes from. It comes from the sky. Basically,
With all the answers.
with all the answers there. So I think it would be a good thing for people to check out these links, specifically the books. If you're open-minded and if you want to venture into opening things. Fun fact is, before you even went into the sensory deprivation tank, I read about that like 10, 20 years ago already, in terms of how people used to go into those tanks, ingest LSD or a psychedelic drug, and then explore. To like be able to project more, because basically the chamber allows you then to float away completely, relax, meditate, get into that state where you can.
have you guys heard of DMT?
Yeah.
Apparently, there's some MIT or some university is gonna, and it links up to the dimension thingy where they want to make contact with entities while under a state of DMT. So I don't know much about it. You know what I'm saying? But I just want to say, people that view this podcast, it's one of those things. This is one of those subjects where you must make up your own mind. We're giving you some information. For me personally, I try and find, when it comes to stories like this, I try and find evidence, or I just don't believe anything, man. But for me, it is more important to give people a platform to speak their mind, and you can make up your own mind if it convinces you or not. You know what I'm saying? That for me is more important. Another thing I wanted to touch on was, don't know if you guys are do you know David Icke?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he also talks about aliens and stuff, eh? That's
He does, yeah. He goes into great detail. Yeah. He talks about reptilian races and the Freemasons and
V.
yeah.
He was actually on. It was 2 weeks ago. He was on London Real,
Yeah.
and they actually banned that episode. Eh? They
Yeah.
took it off
So I don't know
YouTube.
what it was.
Yeah, but it was more 5G type of stuff. But my problem with that is, even though I don't believe the guy, because he was in the 90s, he was the guy that said he's Jesus, yeah.
Yeah.
But the problem with censoring him is you're giving him more power now. You know what I'm saying? And it comes back to freedom, man. Freedom of speech. You know what I'm saying?
People should be allowed to speak, even if it's proven wrong later. Whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
people speak.
I mean, that's what makes us humans. We can, we can express ourselves, and there's a lot of information that start off as taboo, and after a while it comes out that shit, it was actually real, and this radar definitely is one of them. You know what I'm saying? But I'm interested in the rest of that books, though. What can you break that down for us there?
I was just gonna say quickly. I mean, people think that government can't keep secrets, but the Manhattan Project hired more than thousands of people for like a decade working in secret to make the atom bomb, and nobody knew about that.
Yeah.
Also, the NSA people, conspiracy theorists were like, "Oh, America's listening to our phone calls." They were, you just didn't know about it.
Yeah, until Snowden came ahead and told
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah.
I mean, this is so I mean, these are all books by Stephen Greer. I tend to trust him as a source of information. So I've met him and spent time with him and looked him in the eyes. So I trust those people more than people who I've never met, basically.
Is he American author?
He's yes, he's an American guy. He's a medical doctor, but he kind of gave up his career to pursue this stuff properly because he thought it was more important. Yeah, I mean, this is the evidence and the implications. So if you want a big book of evidence, you can read that. This is kind of witness testimony. So these are all high level military witnesses, defense contractors,
That one's
pilots,
maybe
astronauts.
the names of the books as well. I don't know if you can see in
So-
case. That's disclosure.
Disclosure,
and extraterrestrial contact.
Yeah.
I mean, this book interested me. I mean, John was saying local stories. I mean, this is a woman from KwaZulu-Natal who met a guy from space on a farm and had a kid with him. I mean, take it
what she
with a
says,
pinch
yeah.
of salt.
Yeah.
Believe what you want, but she has written an entire book about it. And she's actually a trained meteorologist and a pilot, so she's not a foolish person. She has a degree behind her name, but yeah, I mean, nobody can fault her story. So that's interesting if you want to delve into that. So this is Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge. That's kind of Dr. Greer's origin story, where he talks about how he went through this whole journey and the experiences he had with ETs when he was young, which is interesting how he got involved in this whole thing, basically. And then this book interests me as a scientist, electrogravitics too, because this guy's kind of pieced together all the research and the experiments that were done. So I mean, people don't understand that the stuff, the anti-gravity portion was very, very vigorously pursued in the 70s. All the big aerospace companies had test rigs and they're doing experiments and they were publishing in journals. And then it suddenly went black immediately overnight. So great success, experiments working, disappeared, gone.
Which means it was successful and the government
Yeah.
basically
Became
put a
too
cap
good.
in it.
Yeah.
To add
So,
to
I mean,
that as well,
This is full of schematics and experiments and
yeah.
things to do.
Guys like Ben Rich from Lockheed Skunk Works and Bob Bigelow, I think, from Bigelow Aerospace, all of them have been quoted as saying that they've got the technology. One, I think it was Ben Rich that said it. That we now have the technology to take ET home, and Bigelow is essentially saying that UFOs are real, and we've got that technology. We're not behind anymore. It's just you guys don't know about it.
Yeah.
So if those guys are coming out and saying that, obviously they have massive military contracts to do exactly that, to reverse engineer these things. When the heads of these companies come out,
Yeah, Lockheed is not a small fry in the
No.
aerospace game.
no, exactly. And if they come out and they say we've got this tech, it's working, then
Yeah.
it's
interesting
quite
because
a bombshell.
it's always people at the end of their career. So that was Ben Rich's exit presentation when he left being the head of Lockheed Skunk Works for several years. He was like, we've got the technology to take ET home. We can do faster than light travel, but it's going to take an act of God to release that to the public. And then he just like signed out and mic dropped.
Yeah.
That was his like end. I got chills.
Yeah, and some of them haven't stopped. Like so Bigelow actually, the recent phenomenon. This is another one of Skinwalker Ranch. having all that UFO and paranormal activities. He sold it now, but for the longest time he owned that ranch. And he created NIDS. I forget the name of the acronym. Something a research group full of scientists, because it's a paranormal hotspot.
Yeah.
To go and research the UFOs, to go and research the paranormal things that are happening there. Like so there was also a theory about interdimensional beings appearing and disappearing, and lots of lights in the sky, and the people that actually lived on the ranch having supernatural what do you call it?
Paranormal experiences.
But poltergeist
Okay.
experiences of things moving around in the house, and cattle mutilations, all the standard tropes of things, but all of it happening in that one spot. So
Could it be
Bigelow
that it
was
was
completely drawn to it.
the actual ranch was like, because I know a lot of supernatural theories, etc., are based on ley lines. So the magnetic lines, and we're looking also like in terms of gravitics, because like if you're looking at the railway lines that use the magnetic forces, could it also be that in areas like that, they usually say that if it's on a ley line, it's like a magical line, but I think also magical means science. Because the longest point of time is like if you in the what's it now, the dark ages where you were burnt as a witch at the stake, it was because you had scientific knowledge or you used science and was seen as witchcraft or
Yeah. Or
So-
you told the church they were wrong.
yeah. That was actually that's based on the fact I was watching on Netflix. I was watching Castlevania, and like the backstory was that Dracula's wife was a
witch.
scientist, and then she got burnt at the stake as a witch because the church didn't agree with her. She could actually use science. So I'm just thinking like places like that. Could it be because it was aligned? If there's so much activity happening within a certain zone, could it be that ranch was based on at the confluence of a couple of different magnetic or ley lines?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I tend to think that, science is here, and there's a whole bunch of phenomena outside of science that we
Yeah.
don't understand, but science is growing by step by people who are willing to take a leap of faith and explore these things.
Yeah.
And I mean, ESP has been proven in labs for decades.
Yeah.
That evidence does exist. People don't know about it, but it does exist. I think science will encompass all these weird phenomena one day, but we literally don't have the instruments for it. Like before 1900s, we didn't have anything that could detect radio waves. Now we do, and we know, oh, wait, they exist. Also like UV rays and things. We couldn't detect them, but in 100 years' time, maybe we will detect ley line confluences and things.
Assuming that the stigma attached to it, especially in the scientific community, is lifted somehow. or
Yeah, even
gets
quantum
better.
physics, they don't it doesn't make sense. It doesn't follow the rules. So it's not like man knows everything. It's just that, you know what I'm saying.
But also like the absorption of knowledge. I read the Arthur C. Clarke, which dealt with a lot of these topics we're talking about today at the age of 12. I'm 43 now, so that's 30 years ago. But I doubt I'll find a 13-year-old now that's going to go to the library and get a book like that and try and explore, because the way information is disseminated now, everything is visual. It's like you just sit in front of Netflix. But if you actually had to read that book and actually envisage the contraption looks like it's a Tom C. Clancy Rainbow Six novel, the gun heckler is like zzz. It's like you basically you're making your brain work and to visualize those things. But today's generation doesn't have the ability to sit down and go through a novel, because they want instant facts. That's a short blurb. That's it.
And they can tell other people and pretend they came up with the idea.
Exactly. But now, if you sit back, and I mean, I'm referencing knowledge I looked at 30 years ago in terms of ESP paranormal activity, the different races, the different ET, UFOs, etc. So I doubt anybody's gonna, or a young person today will go back and actually put in the work to go and do the research. You can probably do it online if they want to use a computer, etc. But the point I'm trying to make is like the willingness to absorb knowledge, and also the government, the way the education system is working, is that the general populace will only believe something they see on the news as a fact, instead of going and doing independent research. It also speaks to the fact that the majority of the population does not want to be informed. They do not want to be enlightened. It's like they just want to be Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just as basics: eat, sleep, repeat, basically sex, and that's it, shelter. And that's all they're worried about. But I think it's interesting I think we would like the public, we would like the viewers, anybody that's tuning into this, to take it with a pinch of salt. Do your research, debunk the theories if you want to, if you can. But then also just bear in mind there are many more narratives out there other than our own. So we are constantly learning, we're constantly evolving, and I think as intelligent, sentient beings, we should have the fortitude to go out and say, look here, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to be proven wrong. I'm willing to be basically, if I'm a fool, then I'm a fool, but at least I'm out there trying. I'm not just blindly following a mega train of thought. It's like we are actually here to learn and for the betterment of humanity, and as well as like to find out what else is out there in the universe so that we can become more than what we can become.
Shaky, I'm thinking now of your meetups. Maybe you wanna just let the viewers know about your meetups, if because I actually wanna. I would actually want to join just one evening and discuss this type of stuff. Maybe you can just elaborate.
It's just been very informal until now. It's a Facebook group called the Cape Town UFO Meetup, and we just get together and bring books and talk about them and talk about films, and have open-minded, large discussions. And it's we've only had like 3 of them so far, but they've been really good. I've enjoyed them.
Yeah, there are a few films as well that we're planning on screening and then having discussions and meetups afterwards. So we have a topic of conversation. But also we've had people coming to the meetups twice now where they've had experiences where they also share that. So that's another thing as well, where people come and talk about what they've experienced themselves.
Okay, cool. So, right, so guys, we'll have the links to all these, the Facebook group, etc., all the novels and the different video links that you can check out online. So from us under Lockdown Level 4, the Babbling is podcast, we'd like to thank Evan and John for joining us and showing
I really do appreciate you guys coming out.
Sure. Thanks for having us.
I mean, the first time you guys said you didn't want to be to have the podcast, but I mean, since the footage came out, I think it's more in the open now. It's and it's important to have discussions like this. That's not the norm, really.
Okay, dope. So yeah, from us, everybody stay safe, maintain your social distancing, wear your mask, keep sanitized, etc. Yeah, don't believe the hype. Yeah, peace. Babbling Heads.